Hi, y'all.
How's it going?
If you're from Clarksville, Georgia, would you raise your hand, please? Woohoo!
Right.
Thank you very much. And we're happy all the rest of you are here too.
All right, y'all, I'm going to get us started. Good evening. I'm so glad you guys are here. My name is Jess Grant, and many of you know that this is a long-awaited event. I'm so happy to welcome you to Writing in Harmony, a conversation on creative processes with author Barbara Brown Taylor and musician John Bell. What's interesting about that title is when I made that title, both of them were intrigued by the description that I gave them. I thought it was appropriate, but maybe not. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the many people who made tonight possible. First and foremost, thank you to Barbara, John, and David for their flexibility and their graciousness as our events team worked to reschedule this event after some bad weather in September. A heartfelt thanks to Meredith Young, our events and programming specialist, whose organization always keeps us afloat. I am so grateful to have her on our events team. Thank you as well to the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame Board of Judges for your continued dedication to honoring Georgia's literary voices. At this time, I would like to invite any of our board members who are in attendance to go ahead and stand so we can recognize you and all of your hard work. Thank you so much for being here. And a big thank you to Jan Hebard, Kat Stein, Leandra Nessel, and Kimmy Williams for your support and collaboration in our planning process for this event. Finally, thank you to everyone here tonight for your enthusiasm and your interest. The Special Collections Libraries and the University of Georgia Libraries as a whole are vibrant hubs for learning, creativity, and community. And if tonight's event excites you or inspires you, I invite you to sign up for our newsletter and you can learn about future programs. You can learn about future events and job talks and film screenings and all things like that. Now on to our main event. Tonight's conversation will be moderated by David Barbe, Director of the Music Business Certificate Program here at the University of Georgia. You may know him from his work with bands like Mercyland or the Barbecue Killers, or from producing albums for artists including Amy Ray, Deer Hunter, and Drive-By Truckers. When we began planning this event well over a year ago, we knew that David would be the perfect fit to guide tonight's event. And following the discussion, David will read some of the questions that you all asked tonight. John Bell has been writing and performing with Widespread Panic since 1986. The band has sold out iconic venues such as Red Rocks Amphitheater and State Farm Arena countless times. And the band was inducted into the Georgia Music Hall of Fame in 2008. In addition to his musical career, John is a committed philanthropist, an advocate for spinal muscular atrophy, having helped raise over $2 million for the cause. And of course, we are here tonight to honor the extraordinary Barbara Brown Taylor, who is an author, Episcopal priest, and a scholar. Barbara taught full-time at Piedmont College for 20 years and previously served as rector of Grace Cavalry Episcopal Church in Clarksville, Georgia. She was named Georgia Author of the Year in 2006, and her books, including An Altar in the World, Learning to Walk in the Dark, and Holy Envy, which I know some of you studied and are here tonight, have touched countless readers and appeared on the New York Times bestseller list. Tonight, we celebrate her official induction into the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame, where she joins a remarkable group of poets, journalists, historians, and authors. With that, I will now turn things over to David Barbe to lead us in what promises to be a rich and inspiring conversation about writing, creativity, and life in Northeast Georgia.
Well, thank you, Jess, and thank you, everybody, for being here. Welcome, Barbara. Welcome, JB. It's fun to be up here with you guys. So yeah, this will be fun. And so let's talk, shall we? Okay, so of course, I've already threatened you by starting with questions that are not on the piece of paper. No pressure. Um, but yeah, related to the stuff we agreed to talk about, but just in general, like, how'd you get into doing this? Both of you guys, like, what made you want to write at some point in your lives, whether you were a child or a little older? Did something happen? Did you just find yourself naturally writing? Did you write books? Did you write songs? Did you write other things? What made you want to be, what made you want to write rather than just to be a writer? What made you want to write, to create?
Alphabetical order? What do you think?
Uh,
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
Which name were?
Bell.
Okay.
It's very crafty, Barbara. I like that.
Um, what I do remember writing a song, uh, showing it to my mom when I must have been 8 or 9 or 10, because I know there were more words in it than just see spot run. And, but it was, but I don't know where that came from. And I don't know if that was a precursor of what was to come. But when I look back, you know, kind of wonder, were you always maybe on this path without intention? You might have, and those were the beginnings of it. But then writing itself, when you get into it, that would have just been school and instances where you were forced to write, and, you know, term papers and stuff like that. So I think what spurred me on at that point were certain teachers that opened things up for me. We had one guy, an English teacher, and I remember we had to write a paper on Maya Angelou's "I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings." But the cool thing about it was we had to keep writing the paper until we got an A. So it would come back with its marks, and you'd just go back and do better. Same paper, same thing. You were going to get an A, but it might take you 3 or 4 tries. And I thought that was pretty hip.
That's a great teacher.
It's a wonderful
It's
teacher.
a really inspiring thing.
Ralph Chabert, I'll say his name.
I hope he watches. And I want to point out English major, English minor, English
Minor.
minor.
Journalism major.
Major minors. And I'm one of those guys. You can play those at the same time.
Yeah, but I know both chords. Yeah. Barbara, what about you? How'd you get into writing?
You know, I have a standard story, but I think it's true. And it is that my family moved 13 times by the time I was in 9th grade, and were adamant about my not having anything to do with religion. My sister is sitting right here, so I got to stay close to the truth.
Just close.
So every town that we moved to, we didn't go to church. We went to the public library, and we got 7 books a week. And I think that in these short stays in a lot of cities and a lot of small towns is that I would sit in a chair in the living room, introverted kid, you know, always the new kid in class. And I'd read a book that would take me to another planet, another place. I got to be another person. I got to be people who explored the North Pole and who flew a plane across the Atlantic Ocean. And I learned the power of words to create worlds I'd never visited and to borrow lives I had never lived. And I just wanted to know how they did that. And so I have been busy the whole rest of my life trying to figure out how they did that.
Incredible. And is the goal to get there or to
No,
just keep looking?
No, it's way more interesting to, be on the way.
With you. You know, I have never counted, but I've worked on hundreds and hundreds of albums with like thousands of musicians. And I'm always curious about people's writing process. And there are people that I can kind of lump songwriters into like 2 basic types. Some are people who they write in fits of inspiration. It's like Harry Potter catching the snitch out of the air. And there's other people who they have a process, they have a schedule, and both ways work. I'm curious with the 2 of you, what's your writing process? What's a writing session to look like? Do you work on a regular schedule? Do you wait until inspiration strikes? Is it a hybrid? Like, how does this work for you?
And I really want to hear what he says to this. We'll go back again. But because one of the reasons, you and I have talked about this over lunch, but one of the reasons I wanted to talk with you in this conversation is that his songwriting feels so communal. You know, never mind for a minute the words go to music, but the words come. I don't know what your answer is going to be, but they end up coming out of a lot of people, out of a lot of instruments, and out of voices who could sing it on a night when you got a sore throat and can't. And that kind of communal word creation fascinates me. So, with that preface, inspiration, steady work.
Definitely not steady work. There have been instances where I've had to rush the process or rush the inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Usually because record company, recording schedule, deadline. Boom! You just have to immerse yourself into it and hope that the inspiration's flowing and that kind of thing. But my preference is to just listen, you know, in my head or in my surroundings. And if something's interesting, then I've made a habit of writing it down in a little notebook that I keep in my back pocket.
Yeah.
Or if it's a melody line or something, that'll be a voice memo. So it's there. If you don't write them down, for me, they tend to float away like a dream as the day goes on. You can't remember your dream. And so this way I have them, I can put them away, come revisit them. And usually they will trigger something in the subconscious, and then the songwriting begins. And sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's labored, sometimes but I enjoy the editing process because that gets me, it gets a little deeper into it. The more time I have, the more fun I have with it.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's the answer
For
now.
Now, it sounds like steady work of noticing, and putting away some artifacts. And then it sounds like inspiration, but the pieces are there sometimes.
And it takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
Because when we're going into songwriting session, I've got a notebook full of things that I've forgotten, and then there they are again. Yeah. And so it's safer. And so far, it feels like it's working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to keep an index box, full of good stories, newspaper things, but then I didn't know whether to file things under grace or sin, or it just seemed like a lot of them would go in any folder you wanted to put them in. So kind of gave that up. But I can write both ways. I can rely on inspiration, but what I find is I don't get much done that way. That I work better on deadline or for large advances. Thank you, Mark Tauber, my literary agent in the front row, and Becky, welcome. And just lately, I have started a Substack column. Everybody wants me to explain what that is, but what it means is I've got deadlines. I've always admired journalists who can't wait. I mean, Friday, if you're done, not done, you're in trouble. And even in my line of work, I always dreamed I'd get up on Sunday and just go as far as I go, and said, that's as far as I got this Sunday. I'm sorry that I just didn't have enough. But lately I have gotten discipline back. So the way that works for me now is sit, stay. Sit, stay. Preferably at the same time of day in the same room for about the same amount of time. And it's remarkable how that's revitalizing my writing life. There's just something about oiling the thing on a daily basis that makes it respond better. I had a bishop once who said, if you do not attend to your car, it will withdraw from you. And I think the same thing's true of writing. If you don't give it some time, if you don't demonstrate some kind of, if I don't demonstrate some kind of faithfulness to the process, it leaves. So, and the other thing I do that helps is ask for a helper, some ethereal helper who will not talk to me in a real voice in the room, saying things like, yes, but, or did you think of, but that sounds a little stale. But instead, who will just be another voice in the room. And sometimes when I'm searching for a word, the word's there. Call it a spirit, call it angels, call it the muse, call it a beloved teacher, you know, whom you remember, like the one who waited for you to make your A. So it's a mix. I don't think I could do it without the magic, and I couldn't do it without the discipline. So there's some crazy paradoxical dance in there that makes it happen.
Well, those are both great answers. I'm kind of processing this because, I talked to mention that there's people that like are all inspiration or all, craft, and just like you both are like a hybrid of both. It's your Substack thing is interesting because it keeps you on a, and you're talking about, the journalism aspect. It's like, yeah, you got a deadline, you have to get this done, and without a record to get made, it is so easy when writing songs that it's like, yeah, if it happens, it happens, and. But it's like you're in the studio and you've got a record company and a schedule and a band and a producer and all these people who are just like, yeah, we can't put this thing to bed without the lyrics on top of it. So get cracking. Yeah, it's like a real thing. Part of the work process, the writing process is also like solo collaboration. Barbara, you are identified as a solo artist, as a writer of an author of books. And I think it would be an oversimplification to assume that you just exist in a vacuum without other people or feedback or anything, although maybe not. And JB, you exist in a tangle of humans known as a rock band that is probably influences the writing in different ways. I'm sure some are band compositions, other are I just wrote this song. How do you get what's your process, both of you, about working by yourselves, working with other people? Do you get feedback from other people when you're
Never? No, I should. Everybody should. Everybody should. But I know writers, a lot of writers too. Some say I'm not, you can't look at it till I'm done. And then you can make me do it again. And other people say, I want you to look every 10,000 words and get me back on track. But I can barely get on track. So I can't dare let anybody get me very far off track, or it's hopeless. But what I love about being, thank you, a solo artist, is that I hear from a lot of people who read my books in the middle of the night, and sometimes when they bring them up at a book signing, they got tears on them, or they've got a zillion Post-it notes, look like porcupines. And so I'm always thinking about the solitary context in which a lot of people read books. Because see, words are going past you really fast now. And if you want to hear something again, you're out of luck until you can hear it recorded. But there's something about a page you can reread, you can go back, you can mark, you can bend it down. You shouldn't do that, but you can bend it down. So I think what I love about the solo writing is it in a way mimics the reading of a lot of people. And so I get in the same mood they're in, and feel like maybe we're kind of about the same stage of the night together when we're putting words together. So that's my excuse.
Wow. So, and I am one of those night readers.
Yeah.
And thank you. It's helped to keep me on a more interesting track than my own mental meanderings we're doing at 4:00 in the morning.
If we can text at 3 if you need to, if that's okay with you. Yeah. 3:00, magic hour.
So I think in my case, it's, I tend to write by myself more, but there's a lot of shenanigans and fun that go along with being in a rock and roll band, and riffing off something that somebody said, even if you misunderstood them, or they misunderstood what you said. Did you say this? No, but that's better. Let's put that in. Jojo, for instance, our keyboard player, when we write together, I have no idea where we're going to go. And so that's a lot of fun. It's like a play date when you're a kid. You don't know what's going to happen, and and you get to expand. Uh, um, you get to expand your personal experience in that, diving into somebody else's crazy head.
And to be willing to open your own crazy head up to somebody else too, to like that experience that vulnerability with another person.
I'm I'm extremely grateful for and lucky to have uh, the guys that trust me to to write words and then sing them, and and that they don't feel ashamed or anything or like, ooh, that guy's terrible, But so yeah, I get a lot of leeway in our band situation. I'm very grateful for that.
It's interesting you mentioned like misunderstanding. There's so many famous instances in music of lyrics that come from misunderstanding something. I mean, I can think of all kinds of things in the studio over the years where I was mixing a record by a Japanese artist who was singing these lyrics written by the Olivia Tremor Control, who were based here, and there's a couple of things that she totally misunderstood. And when she said them, in some backwards way, they were like, no, 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 uh, that's way more interesting. We should keep this. Like Tomorrow Never Knows, the Beatles song. That's a Ringo malaprop. Well, what do you think, Ringo? I don't know. Tomorrow never knows. And then he's like, turn that into a song.
This happens in church too. Like one kid grew up thinking it's our father Art in heaven. So that God's name was Art. So it happens.
Is it? Well, um, let's talk about your writing as it relates to your audiences, because your audience is JB at 3 o'clock in the morning reading a book. Like your voice, it's a voice in the reader's head. Um, when it's like if I talk to somebody else about a book we've both read, it's interesting that we both have sometimes a different impression of the character or the even like I love that character because they seem so unrelatable. It's like, oh man, I don't know, I totally related to them in this different way. Whereas performing your music, people hear it literally in your voice, in your singing voice, and it's also a communal experience of listening, much like somebody listening to a sermon in church. It's a communal experience of people listening, people at a concert listening, or people reading a book, or at home listening to a record and reading lyrics. Do you think about how people relate to what you're doing as part of your creative process, or is it just fly it up the flagpole and this is what's coming out and we'll see?
Did you have an answer to that? See, I'm jealous. You get tempo and music. I have to find that in language because I try to find the music in language, and I try to find alliteration and tempo and fast and short and when it's hot and when it cools off. But so much of this multidimensionality is built into your work. Why'd you go,
Oh, just because it's I would say it's deep, but the whole thing, that's kind of the whole reason for doing it, is there's a depth, and it's fun to go swimming. Um, when well, let me see. I'm reminded of another teacher that he had us journal, and said he was going to collect it at the end of the semester, and but every day wanted us to journal, and so that a couple days before the end of the semester came up, and asked him about, you know, are you collecting these? Because I've been bringing it to class every day now, expecting you to collect them. He goes, no, that's just for you. And he goes, now, but I want you guys to all look back at what you wrote and find the places, recognize the places where you were really being sincere and the words were coming through you and you weren't really writing for an audience. You were writing because you were writing, whether images were coming to life and you were reporting on them, or you were just in a a frame of mind that was kind of out of your mind, but you were still writing. But you were not, would be an analogy, like driving the car, but without really gripping the steering wheel hard. Those very sincere moments when you could read your own writing and say, I was being sincere here and I wasn't just putting on a show or trying to impress somebody that might be reading it. And so they never collected them. I was left getting to see what the difference was, and all the, and all the times that I was just full of it. Well, I'm sure, and that was a really important discovery for me, was to be able to recognize when I was bluffing and when sincerity was flowing through me.
Whew. And the question was about how do we relate to our
Do
audience?
you think about an audience when you're writing? Do you think about the fact that another
I
human
do, but
being's
they
going
all-
to read this?
Yeah, but they all love me. They're all in bed with me. And and I'm going to be the hero of the story. And then at some point in this work, I realized none of that is true. None of that is true. And there's something about writing in first person narrative, because there are lots of kinds of great writing, nonfiction and fiction and screenplay. But when you write in first person narrative, which was my choice finally, because I decided the only person I could say thought the way I did was me. And so it just seemed better to go ahead and put that down. But there's a huge vulnerability to that. And I think all that has helped is kind of doing some skydiving. I think my spiritual gift is saying things everybody else knows better than to say. And then they write to me and say, oh, thank God, I thought I was the only one. Oh. And so that has seemed like a really interesting service to do, which is, as best I can. I don't really write about my trip to the Dalai Lama to see him in Dharamsala because you didn't get to go. But I'll write a lot about waking up at 3 a.m. and all of a sudden my heart's beating and I put my finger here. Ed and I were just talking about this, and then you put your hand somewhere else because you don't want to really think about the time that stops. And so I know a lot about that. I think it's what it's what finally ties us together with people we've never met. Though writing a book, I've always thought, and maybe writing a song is like putting a note in a bottle and throwing it in the ocean, and just you never know where it's going to wash up or who's going to pull it out and read it. And it's a fantastic thing. But it does mean I have panic attacks when I realize this stuff actually is going to go into print. And then there will be reviews. And then there will be stars on Amazon. Like when one book went into Portuguese, I only had 1 star, 1 review, and I don't speak Portuguese. So I looked it up and it said boring. So you can't remember that part, while you're pouring yourself out and trying to help somebody who's sitting out there feeling all alone. But it's a terrific, it keeps the adrenaline going, right? The cortisol. And then you go out on the road and find out what your book really was about because you didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
Wrote one called Learning to Walk in the Dark, and then some literally blind people came up and started talking to me about what it was like to live with no light. And I heard a lot about clinical depression and things I didn't know were in that bag. So it's a great unwinding labyrinthine kind of thing to do. And I don't know if that happens, but I bet you some of your songs come out different depending on the audience, depending on who yells when and who. I went to Memphis to go to a Widespread Panic concert when I first invited John to do this because I thought he read my book. I need to go to his concert. And it was remarkable, to watch the energy, and I don't know how that energy, are you just used to it now? Or is there a back and forth when you're at a concert?
Well, both are happening. You can be inspired by it, but also you can be distracted by it. And and just on a technical level, now with the way things are, we have little in-ear monitors, which helps you not lose your hearing, because it can get pretty loud on there up on stage. But you also, it drowns out some of the other stuff. So there's a lot of times where I don't even hear an audience's reaction. I'm just in the song, but you can feel it. There's still a palpability of energy, collective human energy in the room.
Ooh, I love that. Now, this isn't you, but me. So in my mind, you keep a kind of intimacy with this song,
Mm-hmm.
through these things in your ears, so that there are people listening, but you still got your, I don't know, closeness with the song. Sounds
And
to
for
me.
me, yeah, that's what I'm bringing to the table is not so much, the wagging of the dog. I just got to be myself, for better or worse, and see how, if it's related to or not.
I want to mention one thing that the Clarksville people know, but in terms of how John, whether or not he is physically present, how the songs touch people. There's a new restaurant in Clarksville in Demorest called Holden Oversoul, which is the name of one of John's songs. And it turns out the chef there, we went to dinner there one night, and the chef came over, leaned over, and either imagined the tears in his eyes or they were really there. And he said, "You have no idea how many hard places that song got me through." And you said when you first drove through Demarest and saw Holden Oversoul over the restaurant, what was that like?
I was sitting at a light, and there it was. It was the old post office, and I think it was the old post office. Now it's next to the post office. Um, wow. That that's and then thankfully, we got together, and I got to meet the cat.
I
And
did, but he didn't buy our dinner.
Pardon me?
He did not buy our dinner, which was a disappointment to me.
um, yeah,
It's just a wonderful thing.
it took me by surprise, but it's pretty neat.
It is. Have you ever had a song turn into a restaurant before?
No, let me see. We have friends that named their they do gemstones and jewelry and stuff, and it's called Enter the Earth in Asheville, North Carolina, and that's from a lyric from one of our songs.
Barbara, what about you? I'm not you think that you have had a restaurant named after one of your books, but like when you realize that moment with that you've had this tremendous impact on one of your readers. I mean, people must come up to you at readings and book tours and things and relate to, and you realize that you've related to somebody like somebody relates to your words on a deep personal level. How does that feel when you experience that?
Ooh, I shouldn't say this in front of people or on tape, but I have my own earbud in at that point because that can be overwhelming. And it can also be a huge head sweller. And it's real important. I think it was the poet Mary Oliver who talked once about how she uses I in her poetry and that people think that's this I. And she said, no, it's this I. I have an I that's just a little out in front of me to protect me. And it's true, there's no lies there, but there's a way in which both the praise, which can be paired with the judgment, it's best for me to be as much a Buddhist monk as I can be, to do the work and try to detach from the evaluation and outcome of the work. But then there are also nights when I can just be really happy that people read the books. So.
Yeah, I think any creative person, I think it's that mix of things. It's like you don't want to get lost in like chasing a record review or chasing a book review. It's like it would water down the work because the thing that gets the positive review is something that's been made from true inspiration, not something where you're, polishing something up to please other people, but you're creating for both of you, you're creating from deep inside.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is okay every now and again to realize like, yeah, I did that. That feels pretty good. Yeah. It's yeah, personally, it's like I've worked with so many different people, and somebody comes up to talk to me about some record. There's part of me that's just like, oh Lord, what are they going to say? it's just like people go to concerts and are like, the sound man. It's like they they want to tell them what to do all the time. So of course I'm always like slightly worried about that. And then it's usually somebody telling me they love some song I worked on. It's like, oh man, I guess I didn't even notice I screwed it up. So great. Um, let's talk about sources of inspiration. It's like your daily lives, experiences, school, work, professional background, personal background, your families, your friends. Are there things where you find inspiration for writing?
He notices all these things and
He's
has
the
them
great
all
noticer,
written
yeah.
down, and that's not all.
No, I think it's kind of like a little light will go off. And it's the same reason that feeling, that's when you write it down. You go, ooh, there was something.
Right.
I don't know what it is. I mean, something simple like I remember in our first house on a post-it note, I just, the phrase small wishes came into mind. Very simple, just 2 words. I put it on a little post-it note, and it was probably there for a long time before it ever found its way. But there was something I liked about it. And I mean, that's usually what happens is if I have an idea or see something in nature or in human interaction that seems like, wait a minute, this feels bigger than just me. This feels like this could be kind of edging in on universality, that other people might um, be seeing it too, feeling similar things, or I'm grateful that I put some words together that conveys an old idea in a new way, so you can kind of wake up um, beyond the cliche that something really important um, has become, but you can shake it up and go, wow, it's like a brand new idea. No, it's always been there. But here's a new way. So when stuff like that pops in, that's when I'm more of an audience member. It's more objective to me at that point than like me being a writer or anything like that. It's akin to me listening to a Van Morrison song and going, wow, you you know, that was really cool. And so if some of those words happen to pass through me first, um, I'm pretty lucky along those lines, but that's the feeling I get. It's like, writing stuff down and you go, oh, this is working. And you start to chuckle and, um, and I don't, and sometimes, yeah, you feel like you might be getting a little help. Um, and that's a nice feeling because you don't have to put the whole world on your shoulders all the time.
Oh, you're talking my language. Same, because I think it's one reason it's not arrogant when you sometimes look back at something you wrote and you say, "That's amazing," and it's usually a place where you were a, a, a through a thoroughfare. It came into the room. Some of you've heard Elizabeth Gilbert talk about a great poem that came over her head and she ran to grab it quick before it got away. It just, her job was to catch it. And so some of those things, that gives me chills when that happens, because whether it's the collective unconscious, whether it's the divine, whatever it is, it's more than me. It's taken me into some kind of us and just, into some kind of amongness that is so transforming that it's a remarkable thing. I know we talked about flow while we were waiting back there, but the other piece of flow for me is self-forgetfulness. Do you know how sometimes you wake up in the morning, or maybe you wake up at 3 with me, and there's just a few minutes where you're just kind of hearing the cicadas outside, or you notice the fans going thwack, 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 and you're just where you are, and it's just where it is. And then you remember you have surgery tomorrow morning, or you remember the income tax is due, and it's just like, damn, because just for that little bit you got some self-forgetfulness. You just got to be in this unbranded moment of kind of pure isness. And that is where flow comes in for me in writing, is I forget what time it is. And when I get up and look, I've told a lot of people being a writer is just like having the flu all the time. You just sit in a chair and your butt grows roots into the chair, and you drink too much and you bite your fingernails. I mean, it's just, but then there are other times when it just lifts you up and you've been in the seventh heaven for a while, and then it drops you back down. You go, whew, time for lunch.
I I greatly appreciate this concept of like grabbing as it goes by or writing it down before you forget it, because it's a way I advise young people who I talk to about creation all the time, about being creative all the time, is that yeah, stop, voice memo, write it down, take a moment, get it out, because it's the worst thing you can ever do as a creative person is convince yourself, oh, yeah, I need to remember that. I remember that later. Yeah,
How could I forget that?
yeah, yeah. It's funny now because we're not in the moment. But like I had a moment about a year ago where I had this idea. Walked in my studio, picked up this guitar. Somebody tuned it some weird way. I started playing and singing this thing, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I should remember this." And then it occurred to me, it's like, "Hey, dope! Like you're in a studio, like." Like push a button. It's like it's all there for you. And I did, and it turned out something I was really happy with. But I was so ready to, because of the income taxes or surgery next week, or oh I need to get gas, or I forgot to text some. It's like just like this just like life getting in the way of living, And but it's important to grab those moments. I'm gonna check on our time. We good? Okay. I need, yeah, it's like the quarterback finding the safety. I just need to make sure I never be right. Okay, great. Should we listen to this song?
Oh yeah, let's do that now. Let's do that
You want to
now.
talk about that for a second? We talked about playing a song.
Yeah, let me see. And
I guess we're doing it now because I just mentioned it, so
well,
we're
yeah,
kind of
it's
screwed.
also like we've touched on. Well, I'm glad Barbara mentioned that this was. Well, I think after we talked the first time, I said, "Here's a song that I wrote, like, and I had all the time in the world, and I go in the garden and rethink, go through the images, and instead of like playing music in my headphones or something, I just go, okay, just tap into that song and let it grow and let it change, and but because of what we're doing here, some interesting things came to mind. I was we were writing a song as a band, and Jimmy had some music going, and I thought it sounded like an old Delta juke joint kind of groove. And being pretty darn white, I only had so much experience about, you know, the Delta juke joint thing. So I uh, started looking up some books that might shed some light. Little baby research, not big research, but something to just spark some images and ideas. Um, and in doing that, I found, okay, so that's a whole different song. In doing that, in the little bar under there, oh, some other people got like that book, like this book, and it was a book by Todd Snyder. I never met a story I didn't like, and Todd's he's a musician that we've kind of grown up next to each other. We don't see each other a lot, but we started out at the same time, and we're all still playing. Dave and Dwayne have played in a band with him. But I really dug that book, and he spoke about uh, a lot of relationships with Jerry Jeff Walker and Jimmy Buffett that he had. And so I was just sitting there after reading the book going, yeah, I wonder what it would be like, just to write a song like that. And before you know it, you're starting the beginnings of writing that song. And you just I surprised myself going, wait a minute, wait a minute, I'm writing this. This is a new song, and it's been inspired, and here's where it's maybe going, but here are the beginnings of it. And this song took a while to write, but only because I really liked being in the process of it. I almost didn't want to put the paintbrush down.
Right.
And so I'll introduce it.
All right.
This is called Life as a Tree. Daydreams and nightlife, chasing what might be around every next corner. Who knows what we'll see? Maybe an old friend or a stole from reflection. Take a long, brave look at God's imperfection. There's a rock and roll star hero. Well, what the hell does he know? Different city each night with a snake oil freak show. Strolling babies don't do cry, and soldiers do and die. And a mama of 3 feet show bar each night. Takes a lifetime to the middle, a half-life to the finish. Sacred moments like Adam, some bonded, some free. We might bruise, we might lose, maybe win. Sometimes wonder, a tree never question its days as a seed. Well, nobody's perfect. But what fun would that be? We make our own movies, starring them too. It takes two to tango, and billions for the big dance. Look if we find just some of them who take our souls for who they are, and then that take us to. This life is too short not to stand in those shoes. Takes a lifetime to the middle, a half-life to the finish. Scattered moments like Adam, some bonded, some free. My daddy once told me, son, don't be a jackass. Be one, he's sleepwalking. Just let him be. Takes a lifetime to a half-life to the finish. Sacred moments like Adam, some bonded, some free. We might bruise, we might lose, maybe win, sometimes wonder. Oh, guitars never question their life as a tree.
Beautiful. Anything, so the writing process of that song, you started with this whole like Delta blues trip and got there. It's like you started in one place and totally missed the exit and wound up on like a totally different different highway. It's like fascinating. Like I'm glad you told that story before you played that because that's like a fascinating thing to me.
Yeah, it's well, the same guy that had me journaling in that class, he just had a phrase. He said, don't look any gift horse in the mouth. If something,
Yeah.
if something comes by, yep, grab it.
Um, Here's a question on here that I'm kind of curious about, sort of related. It's like, for both of you, it's like, did you have, like, when you were a young person getting going, did you have other ideas about like a profession, like, or a hobby or something you wanted to be in life? Like, I told both of you that my dad, was a musician, and he always told me when seeing I was a musician was like, music's not a calling, it's an affliction. It's like, and I think that's true of all creativity. You are. Did you ever have anything else you thought you were going to do, like when you were a young person, or did just like,
French translator at the UN,
Nice.
famous woman archaeologist, wilderness trek leader, trainer of Tennessee walking horses, clergy nowhere on the list. And so a lot of other things. Uh, a lot of other things. And I'm so glad I didn't do any of them.
yeah? What about you, Jamie?
Well, um, I guess the closest I got was for a second, I wanted to pursue golf. I'm a lot better at throwing clubs than actually
Yeah.
making good contact. But as far as my first idea of like, ooh, maybe I could do this for a living, that was golf. That was short lived. As soon as I came to University of Georgia,
Like you're like high school age kid.
yeah.
And
But
They went to college together, if you don't know that. Okay.
No, David and I were. Well, he was the kind of guy. Here we were, 30,000 people in campus,
I'm
and
a
I
little
think
nervous right now.
no, but I think we probably saw each other like we were registering for classes at the same time.
Yeah.
We just, out of all these people in this town, we saw each other repeatedly
Yeah,
in
for
that
sure.
first week of existence on campus, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I can't remember getting to know. I can't remember meeting you. I just remember knowing you. I remember seeing you in that first music business class, and already like we
There's that
already
guy.
knew each other.
Mhm.
But like how it is that we actually like registering for classes or freshman orientation or something, like just yeah.
And what was the name of that class, according to your professor, in a memorable phrase?
Oh, you know the phrase.
It was slip, sliding, jiving, and conniving. 101.
Which is true. I would completely ruin the rest of this night. I could easily tell like Bill Ramal stories for like an hour, but we're not going to do that because should we move just time to move to the audience questions here? All right, we'll shuffle these up. Thank you, audience, for
I
providing.
do want to point out I wasn't jealous at all that 3/4 of them were for him. And they were great questions. I promised to save them and take them home and ask them later. So we won't have time to get to all of them.
All right, and you both thought I was kidding about this whole Jerry Springer portion of the evening, but and I'm going to show my age right now by getting these guys out so that I'll actually read your words correctly. Have you ever had an unexplainable spiritual experience that made your faith even stronger, and how did it affect your writing?
Yes.
Good answer.
Well, let me see. There is this I can point to as something I've experienced that, and now luckily we experience it more often than we used to in the beginning days as a band. When all six of us are really, you just you know you're focused, but you can also sense that everyone else is focused, and that we are all really listening to each other at the same time, and we are all really responding appropriately and making music together appropriately at the same time. There's a phenomena that comes in where time just slows down, or well, things open up. So it seems like there's all kinds of time to do what you want to do and say what you want to say musically in that space. Um, and that, as a band, we've kind of inadvertently just, that is a repetitive motion that has, that helps bring it up more often than it did when we were just starting out. And so, and that it's a really, boy, when you feel it, it's really neat because you just look at each other and everybody's on the same page.
Now
Yeah,
he,
that's the secret. That's the secret of great bands. Is that thing right there? That sound where the music is where all the things in room collide, and you are all listening to each other and tuned in.
Yep.
and see, his answer was about direct experience, right?
Yeah.
And so I know we got other questions, but quickly, I mean, I gave a short answer, but the tricky thing about writing about spiritual experience is staying away from all the words that we've boxed that with. You know, the acceptable words, the unacceptable words, the heretical words, the true words. And so, how it has changed my writing is to find ways I can evoke the experience through direct story, direct narrative, hopefully things every one of you could feel in your body if I got the language right. I once gave a bunch of preachers an assignment. I said, I want you to write about a holy night, but you can't use the word holy in it. And you can't use the word God in it. You can't use any religious language. Now write about that night. And it was some of the best writing a bunch of them had ever done because they couldn't use the code language. They couldn't use the meta language. They had to stick with whatever it was that evoked the feeling. So that is how that has changed. Is I used to easily reach for theological language, and I don't do that anymore. And that's brought me weal and woe.
All right. Well, here's our next one. This is for you, JB. What was one of the most meaningful songs you have ever written, and what was the process behind that? Was the band in the process, or was it just you?
Well, you know, you're going for it every time that you're writing a song. Um, just for the cheap out here, Life is a Tree was that was a glimpse of something that I felt really proud of, and for the reasons we already talked about. And but there again, boy, when you get to share it with the band and they like it too,
Yeah.
that's it's a very humbling feeling. And you know, and even our producer John Keane, the steel pedal guitar and a little banjo that you could hear plinking in the back, that was John adding his
I knew
inspiration
that was
to.
John's pedal steel, the first note. I could. There's sometimes a musician has such a, it's like Miles Davis. It's like a musician that does not have tone, does not have anything. It's like I knew that was John. The second I heard that steel come in, I was like, yeah, I know who that is.
I could hear it in my head, and I'm
Yeah.
so glad that I just, brought up the notion to John. I just thought that's what it went with the song in my head at that point. But then I'm so glad I suggested it before worrying about hurting anybody's feelings. It didn't get a solo with that.
Yeah.
You know, if Jimmy, wait a minute, you don't want me to play guitar there? You know? But the cat was already out of the bag.
Yeah, and in a group, I think it's an important thing to recognize that, like, once you put your record out, once you put your book out, it's like it's out there forever. And so, best not worry about hurting somebody's feelings. You got to make your art, otherwise you're stuck with it once it comes out.
Or people make terrible memes about you that show up for 30 years.
Man, we made it almost all the way through. This is the first mention we've had of a meme. Okay, Barbara, I have a question for you.
Code language.
This is not a Jerry Springer question. Barbara, you wrote Learning to Walk in the Darkness. How did you find your way through the darkness? Actually, this is a question about Barbara's book, but for you, JB, which is like, how did you find your way through the darkness of losing Mikey? And what inspired you to keep writing? And did you find any light in those dark times?
Is that to him?
That's to him. He's like, you wrote the book, but the question is for JB.
Well, That was 2002.
Yeah.
And Mike had been diagnosed and sick for about a year and a half or so before that. So we knew it was coming, and he also he wanted to play till he couldn't play anymore.
I recall, and I admired that so much.
I don't know if I'd be the same way. But here's a funny little anecdote. I think it's funny. We also didn't know when he was going to get so wobbly that he couldn't play,
Right.
and we had a bunch of gigs. So we had gone into rehearsals with another guitarist and with Randall Bramlett, saxophone player, and so we would be able to carry on if Mike had to leave the road, which eventually that did happen in the middle of a tour. But we were practicing a song in a trailer behind, that was our rehearsal space at one of the Bonnaroo shows. And we had Dottie Peoples and part of her gospel group were backing us up. It was a big to-do. And so everybody was in the spirit. And, Randall and George started playing along with the song, and Mike, he just said, "Stop! I'm not dead yet." He said, "Wait your turn," kind of thing. But for a blip, we wondered how we were going to do it, and obviously one of the options was to not play anymore, or any idea that you had was in your mind. And shoot, that was 23 years ago. So I remember at the time it was like we weren't done yet, and so we decided to continue on. We were about to take an intentional break from music for about a year, just to reboot, for fun, for no reason other than let's try getting away from it for a second and then come back to each other. But when he passed, we stayed working for about another year and a half, I think, before we did take that time off. But then it was like, boom, we're just back in action.
Yeah. One final question for both of you. This is a two-part question, and I'm just going to read the whole thing and let you guys just go with it here. Did you capture language first, or do you capture language first, or does it capture you? And what has formed you and deformed you? And I'll let you guys run with that any way you want to.
No, wait. Do the first part first.
First part first.
I got so interested in the second part, I forgot the first part already.
That happens to me all the time. Okay. Do you capture language first, or does it capture you?
I was captured by language growing up reading great writers.
Right.
And then I worked at how I could capture language, and it turned out I couldn't capture it, but I could chase it. That's just a Zen koan. Nobody can. That's a beautiful question.
Yeah.
And I think the only answer is both, right?
Yeah.
So
JB?
captured.
Definitely captured, inspired at first. And then you want to play in that world.
Right.
And without any skills. Yeah. I mean, the first skill you have is just saying, "Oh, what the hell," and trying it on your own.
Right.
And seeing what happens.
Yeah, I think for any kind of writing, the inspiration when you're young and you read some great writers, you hear some great musical artists, and it's almost like you're putting on the Halloween costume of being your favorite author, your favorite songwriter, for a little bit.
What was the second part?
Oh, I'm about to give it to you right now. In 1974, there was a rumor about you, kidding, that you thought I wasn't going to do it.
Jerry, we said we wouldn't do this.
Are we recording this? Okay, for real. What has formed and deformed you?
How much time do we have?
Well, I can see Jess, so she'll let us know. She'll give me the high sign over there. mean, the way I look at this question is like, just like your creative process, has it like changed you as a person, or has it helped you? Has it or has it just boiled down to your essence of what you are?
Oh, well, what deforms is chasing the numbers.
Yeah.
I'm chasing the minute I got on Substack, I started tracking my likes and my restacks. It was sickening
Yeah.
to watch how quickly my mind went there, chasing the numbers, whether it's book sales. I just talked to an author today who will probably never be able to sell another book because she only sold 8,000 copies. The first one was a great book,
Right.
but big publishers can't put that in the bank, so
Yeah.
so chasing the numbers deforms me in every way. And what has formed me, I think, is just realizing the books reach real people who think and wonder and screw up and reform. Because reform's not in there, is there? There's also reform after deform.
Yeah.
I'll just put that out there.
JB, what about you?
It might be the same kind of thing that, where, I mean, for the form and the deform and the reform, which thank goodness there's a chance for reform. Because you could be really excited about having found a niche. But that niche can also open up a world for you in the, when you're trying to open up to your subconscious, let the sincerity flow, that you might even get to a place where you go, God, you're so aware of some things about yourself or things in your past. You look at yourself with a critical eye in your lifetime where it's it nudges up on that dark night of the soul kind of thing, and you don't want to be that broken. So that's where the deformed part comes in. And then thank God you brought back reform into the conversation, because when you sometimes if you're that cracked open, you can you don't know if you're coming out of it the other way. But then it's morning and the birds are there and the dogs are there. And my baby's there.
Yeah.
And so you just begin all over again.
Wow. Do you feel kind of soft right now? I think the whole room went kind of soft on that one.
Yeah.
I mean, in the best way.
Which seems like a perfect place for us to wrap up this part of the conversation. It has been an honor for me to sit up here with the two of you. And thank you for letting me be part of this. We've got a little more to come still, but we'll stop the questions and answers right here. And thank you both. This has been fantastic. Let's hear it for the two of them.
Yikes. I'm putting in a statement. Yeah. I'll just walk around behind. Well, Barbara, John, David, thank you all so much. What a wonderful, wonderful exchange. And I know that we're all grateful for the opportunity to have been a part of this and witness that exchange tonight. I'm Toby Graham. I'm a university librarian and associate provost. And for the last 25 years, the university has had the privilege of being able to acknowledge Georgia writers past and present who embody the best in Georgia's literary tradition as a part of the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame. So at this point in the evening, it is my honor, my privilege to officially and formally, this is your line, but please stand, please rise, to induct you into the Georgia Writers Hall of Fame. Barbara Brown Taylor.
Thank you all again for joining us tonight. And thank you for such a vibrant conversation. Although we must conclude the conversation for now, I invite all of you to join us in the hallway for refreshments and book sales. If you found this to be an enjoyable experience, I again encourage you to connect with us here at the libraries. There will be QR codes outside where you can sign up for our newsletter, look at some other upcoming events, or donate to help support some of our other endeavors. Specifically, I encourage you to exit that way, as I will whisk Barbara and John this way for just a minute. Give me a couple of minutes to get some photos, and then they will be set free into the reception. I will play the song once again to usher you out. But thank you all again for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure to have each and every single one of you.
We're getting 2 spins out of this one.